So I learned that my mother, obviously 14 when I was born, and my foster mom, her foster mother, was very adamant about her going through with this pregnancy to have me. Thank God. But a short time after I was born, the story that I know is that I was quickly, and I say quickly, anywhere from 5 days to 5 weeks after my birth, I was put into the custody, the care. I was called what they called a ward of the court. The judge says, this is what's going to happen, basically, so on and so forth. And that's where I ended up. Again, thank God. This is what I'm thinking back on it, obviously, thank God. So I was raised with my foster mother in a foster home. She had been a foster mother for 50 years of her life. She was a nurse, entrepreneur. She ran boarding homes for the mentally challenged while also raising us foster kids. There was kids that came and went. There was four of us that stayed connected to the family our whole life in my age bracket. There was obviously tons of kids, but there's a group of three or four of us that kind of stayed connected, stayed there our whole childhood. But I remember the first time that I was actually sexually
Take your time.
that's the part I always get. Oh man. The first time I was ever molested. I was probably, oh, I know younger than 10. And I remember that night, it was a thunderstorm. And I always remember about living in the Midwest, that the thunderstorms were just, I always felt very intense, loud, and all the lightning, because our house, we had these sun porches, and you couldn't escape. As a kid, you try to get somewhere where you couldn't hear the thunder or see the lightning, and there was no escaping. So we all would sleep in this room, and maybe some people on the floor, pallets, but we just all kind of we all would just be together and sleeping. And I'm not sure this particular night why we all, because this wasn't a normal occurrence. We never, slept in the same rooms, boys here, girls there. But for whatever reason, this night we were. I'm not sure if our parents were home that night, because they were fairly social as far as travel and just being out in the town, whereas at the casinos or whatever. So I'm not sure what those circumstances were. I don't remember. But I remember being awakened by a tug at my pajama bottoms, my pants. And I'm sure they were Superman or Spider-Man of some sort. And I remember waking up and seeing what's going on. And there was this older girl who hadn't too long, her and her brothers, been placed in our foster home. And she began to perform oral sex on me. Obviously, I'm almost paralyzed to know what to do at that age. I didn't, no idea. But I remember, not ever saying anything about this. And it didn't last, very long. But looking back on it, I obviously never said anything, but I remember the weird feeling of, it didn't feel bad. And it wasn't until a little bit later, I think, to where it hit me that, it wasn't right. And it may have been several years, I don't remember, but I knew. This story was the first time anything like this had happened that I can remember, but I often forget it because it was only oral, so I don't think of it, and it was from a girl, so I didn't think of it as such a bad thing. Growing up, I didn't. Obviously, looking back on it now, like a different lens. So I think that kind of began the cycle of the, incestuous behavior between my foster siblings and I, whether it would be, you know, between us, the two of us, my two older foster sisters, rather, you know, being woken up in the middle of the night, what I call the shenanigans that would go on a nightly basis, whether it was, and usually it was, they were older, I was younger. So I always say, well, they would approach me, but I'm 100% sure that it was back and forth, give and take after it all, got going. And I never for a minute thought there was anything wrong with that, because we weren't brothers and sisters, we weren't blood. So we weren't doing anything like nasty or disgusting or, or wrong. But that went on from the time I was probably 12 all the way until they moved out. Both of them ended up getting pregnant as teenagers. Our foster mother was not having that. There's a lot of revelations about their abuse that came out as I got older that I know about. So it helps me understand what was going on for them to even to be, doing things with me that they had been abused as well. I learned, and obviously I always just shrugged it off as this is what guys do. It's no big deal. But I think we all know now that we're all grown up, we're adults. That was wrong. We weren't supposed to have our innocence taken, theirs and mine, from us, and that's the way I feel like was done. I feel like it was, my childhood was almost the purity of my childhood was taken.